Hello everybody and welcome to another video. We just finished Ding and Nepo's match in the 3D World Chess Championships. And we got Ding Laren winning the World Chess Championships, winning everything in the world. So which is great. But what would be nice to follow it up with stupid chess between a 900 versus 1000 player ELO chess game. So what are we waiting for? And this video is based on Gotham Chess's video, which is God Pawn. Please watch that first before this because it's literally the first one to be made than me, which is the ridiculous pawn chain. But let's see what white plays first. Here we got e4, e5, taking all the spaces with the pawns, and we got a London system from white, which is bishop c4, or maybe just a scholar's mate. And then we got knight to f6, and then pawn to f3, blocking the knight's development, but maybe here next, because it's a London system, knight to e2 might happen, and then we got knight to c6, developing the knight, and we got pawn to c3. Now, I don't know what is the intention of this. Maybe it's to play pawn to d4 to support the pawn on d4, but that blocks the development of the knight, which I don't really like. But bishop to c5 next is played, which Black has 3 pieces now developed, while white has only 2 pieces developed, which is really bad, and 3 pawn moves. And we got knight to e2, which develops a knight now, and we got pawn to f4, which literally blunders on the spot. What the heck is pawn to f4? Pawn to f4 undefends the pawn on e4, at the same time makes the king unsafe, and Black literally did that, which is really great. And we got pawn to d4, striking back in the center because of his failure in pawn on to f4 move. And we got pawn to d4, attacking the pawn on e5, and then on the bishop on c5, the bishop needs to go back, or maybe the pawn needs to take on d4. But I would recommend the pawn taken on d4 because I wouldn't like this pawn harassing the whole team of in the black side. And we got bishop to b6, rook to f1. What is rook to f1? You can just castle right away and then put the rook on f1, right? What is rook to f1? That defends the pawn, sure, but you can literally just castle, and that's an option, and you know that still defends the pawn. Rook to f1? I don't know. By the way, to remind you, this is a daily game, which means this game is lasting about 2 days. We got castles from black, which is great. Then this move on rook to f1. We get pawn to d5, attacking the knight. The knight goes to a5, escaping. And then we got bishop to d3, going back from the knight's danger. And then we got f5, developing a bishop and also defending the knight on e4 because the bishop is attacking the knight on e4. And we got this trade. It is not a very good trade for white to trade the knight, because literally it's a knight for a bishop, and knights are lesser powerful than bishops. Although this knight is very powerful, so maybe he doesn't need to get rid of it. But when he does get rid of it, the bishop gets rid of the bishop, and now the bishop is more powerful than the knight over here previously. So why do you need to trade the knight for the bishop with white? Like, there's no reason, and all of your pieces are on the back rank, except this knight. What? We got pawn to b4, attacking the knight on a5, and then knight to c4, attacking. We got knight to a3, offering another trade, and yet it's actually a good trade because now he can develop the bishop, but still, black is doing better and white is doing worse here. Queen to h4, attacking the pawn on h2 and checking, and we got pawn to g3, attacking the queen, but that doesn't matter because the queen can just take on h2. Bafo has +2 pawns now. Another pawn now, which he has 2 pawns now, and white actually castles and make the rooks connected so that it can be defended from the black queen. On g2, we got bishop to d5, taking the pawn on d5, which is a measly little pawn. But if the white queen takes the bishop, the black queen can actually take the knight. So black is kind of winning. I don't know if black literally saw that, and maybe, I don't know, and black just takes. I think black saw that, am I right? Queen to g3, taking yet another pawn. Now he's got +4 pawns on his inventory. We got king to b1, going back. What is king to b1, by the way? What is that? In all of the pieces, you move the king, and then the king needs to move to the corner, and then bishop to e3, attacking the queen, having a fork on the pawn, and the queen needs to move, and the bishop can take the pawn because the knight is blocking the defense of the pawn, And now he did take the pawn, and then we got queen to f2 attacking the queen on g3, involving a trade. We got bishop to c1, and then we got this trade, chopping the trade. And now we have these good pieces, and Bafo has +5 pawns, which is really great. So it's really good of a benefit to trade everything so that in the end, he has 5 pawns and maybe 1 piece left. And we got rook to e8, maybe trying to push that pawn on, yet the bishop isn't, he kind of can't move over here. We got queen to e6, trying to transport the queen to a better square. And now, as you can see, the inconvenience of the bishop. Since the bishop can just be traded, but instead he left it out there, and now becomes a blunder. And then we got queen to e4, taking the bishop. He should have traded all of the pieces and just simplify and win the game, but he didn't. He literally sat out and make the bishop go there, and then literally stayed there, and then literally, worst of all, he blundered it. Like, what? Queen to e4, and then we got queen to b6, transporting the queen to another better square, and yet, which I don't know why. This is not a better square, believe me or not, because the queen can't move anywhere. Like, what? But anyways, we got knight to f3, going back to attack the pawn on e5, and then pawn to f6, defending the pawn on e5. We got rook to h1, pressuring the pawn on h7, and we got pawn to h6, trying to defend the pawn on h6, try to, if the pawn moves up, the pawn gets defended by the g7 pawn. We got queen to g4, and now a queen is going to be pointed here, which it can be a cannon soon, which will literally explode the king side. But pawn to a5, trying to break out here, and then rook to g1. Like I said, this is going to be checkmate. But rook to e7 here solves all of his problems. But yet then, the knight can just move to f5 and try to obliterate the king somehow. And we got rook to h1, which is a seemingly stupid move that I don't know that pressures this pawn. Black takes the pawn on b4, but the use of this rook move is to take this pawn, because now you cannot take the rook because the king will be taken, and that's an illegal move, so black can't do that. We got rook to b1, attacking the queen on b6, pawn to c2, attacking the rook. If the rook takes the queen, the pawn will queen, like this. This is actually a flashy move, and we got this check. This is really good. But that didn't happen in game. What happened in the game is pawn to c2, and then knight to d2, and literally just straight up blunder a rook, and it queened. And then he has to take, because, why would he let a queen? Rook to h2, and then pawn to c5, supporting the pawn on d4 more. And that is not literally necessary, but it may be queen. But king to f8, we got king to f8 here, and then queen to h8. We got queen to h8, and then king to f7, and then queen to h5, and then king to e6. And what is the queen doing? It's just giving some random stupid checks, and now you cannot check the king, which is really terrible. But then now, pawn to b5 is going to happen, and maybe sooner or later, the pawn chain will be unlocked. We got pawn to a3, and then pawn to c4, and then rook to a2, maybe pushing the pawn more, but rook to a7, and maybe this is a bomb to the king soon. And then we got pawn to b4. The pawn cannot take the other pawn because this is checkmate and will obliterate the king completely. But we got pawn to a4 to prevent that, and pawn to b3, attacking the rook. The rook goes to rook to a3 right here. We got rook to b8, defending the pawn more from the rook, and also knight to d2, putting pressure on the pawn on b3, and the pawn on c4, which it needs to be defended, the pawn on c4. But he gives a check. The king has to move, or the pawn has to be obliterated, but there's no way to obliterate the pawn, so the king moves. We got pawn to c3 from this check over here, and now pawn to c3 is possible. And we got this very beautiful pawn structure, which didn't happen in forever. Like, literally, in the past couple of years, no one literally had 6 chained pawns. This is the biggest pawn chain I have ever seen, and the funny thing about it is it attacks the knight, and it forces the knight to move. And if the knight moves here, it's a fork to the queen and king. And the king has to move, and the knight has to take the queen, and then rook to a5. So, Bafo has plus 1 point, but John has. They're all equal. Like 6 pawns and 2 rooks versus 1 queen and 1 rook versus 1 pawn. White is and black is kind of balanced, but yet again, white cannot stop all these pawns from queening. Like, how can you stop these pawns from queening? Here? What? The king can just defend. What? This is ridiculous. This pawn structure is unbeatable. What? Anyways, we got to this position and the knight moved to b3. What a horrifying mistake. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you're that dumb, and if you're too dumb, what is this? Attack the queen? Sure, the queen just moves, and black is winning. Pawn to a5, and then rook to h8, and then king to a2. We got rook to a8, and then king to b1, and hopefully black wins this. And maybe not wins, but believe me, black will win. If what else, then I'm gonna literally go out of this seat, and God knows what I'm gonna do next. We got rook to a5, rook to a5, and then rook to a5, taking rooks upon each other, and we got knight to a5, and then queen to a5, taking the knight, and then queen to b3, queen to a1, finishing off with breaking the whole pawn chain, which is pawn to d3. If you take the pawn, I will queen. But if you take this pawn, I will also queen. And those are the only two options which I have explained already. So the king has to move any of these, which leads to a losing, very, very, very obliterated for white position. I hope you enjoyed the video, and this legendary pawn structure has made it to the top of the history, and literally Gotham Chess made it first to say it. And I'm just here to spread it, so please just watch that too. Yeah, see you guys in the next video. Subscribe, like if you enjoyed the video, and yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.